Hey guys, today I'm going to talk about JSON Web Tokens, how you can integrate JSON Web Tokens in ASP.NET Web API. JSON Web Tokens are basically designed for authorization purpose. Let's first talk a little bit about the difference of authentication and authorization. Authentication is the process when client passes username and password and your server is supposed to check if the user exists in the system or not, basically trying to figure out who you are. And authorization is the process where authorization process comes after authentication, and where we're trying to figure out what can you do in the system. What are your roles? What are your claims? What are the permissions that you have? And what is basically your authority in the system? And like I said, JWT is designed to handle authorization of the system. Let's try to understand the problem statement here. The problem is, so this is our architecture, first of all. We created ASP.NET Web API, installed EF Core in our Web API, and then we are talking to our database. We have some clients who are trying to log into the system. So they're passing username and password, and our ASP.NET authenticates the user and sends the user back. But what happens if the client wants some other data? How do we authorize that request? How do we know that the person who logged into the system is the same person who's asking for the data? Pass username and password again? That's stupid, right? So to fix this problem, we use JSON Web Tokens. So the authentication part is the same, but when we receive username and password, the extra step the Web API does, it creates a token. It creates a token, signs a token with secret key, which only server has. You do not share that key with any of your clients or anybody. And with the data, with the user, it returns JSON Web Token back to the client. Now it's client's responsibility to store JWT. You can store it in local storage or session storage, or you can store it in application variable, depending on what client you're using. Now, next time, if you want to get some more data from the API, you pass that token in your authorization header. And that's how Web API knows it's an authorized request. It validates the token and sends a response back. If anyone tries to tamper with the token, then the token won't get validated, and then ASP.NET Web API won't send the response back because it's been tampered, or some hackers is trying to get information from our ASP.NET Web API. And that's why JSON Web Tokens are awesome. And because of that, you do not even have to store your tokens in your SQL Server. Because it's a secret key which only server has, it validates the token and sends it back to the client. All right, so how do these JSON Web Tokens look like? JSON Web Tokens are divided into three parts. One is header, where you mention the algorithm and type of your token, where it's using this algorithm for signing my JSON Web Token. And in the payload, you mention the name identifier and the claims that this user has. Also, you mention when the token was issued at, when it's going to expire, all that good stuff. And the third part is the signature, which is the encoded part of the header and encoded part of the payload, and which has been signed by the secret key which only server has. And it uses this algorithm for signing the key. And you look at the encoded part, which is divided by periods, and it's divided into three parts. The first part is the header, the second part is the payload, and the third part is the signature. All right, so how do we implement, how do we integrate this JSON Web Token in our ASP.NET Web API? So the first thing that you should do, you should create a secret key which only server has, and then you install JwtBearer package to create the token after authentication, and this token needs to get sent back to the client. Now, if the client wants more information, then you put these authentication. You add authentication, which is JwtBearer and you add JwtBearer to let them know which key you should use to validate the token. And then you can put authorize attribute on any of the controllers or the functions that you want to validate before sending the response back. All right, so let's follow the steps and see how we can do it. So I'm going to use the same solution that I've been working on for this video series. I have this login function, and this login function takes a username and password in the body, and it checks against the database if the user exists in the system or not. Basically, this is the authentication part of it, and we are sending back the user. Let's check the call in our postman. So I have this login function here, and in the body part, I'm passing the email address of John Smith and his password. And when I click on send, it gives me back the user. You can see here that I've added this token field. Currently it's null, so we'll have to add the token when we send it back to the client. All right. So the very first thing that you need to do, you need to create a secret key. For this time, I'm gonna be copy pasting a lot of code because I don't want you to, waste time seeing me type. So I'll be copy pasting a lot of code, but this code is there on GitHub repo, so you can copy paste my code too. All right, so the first thing that we need to do, we need to create a JWT secret key. So I'm gonna go to my app settings and create a secret key here. This is a secret key and you don't share with anyone. I suggest you should have a better key than this. So what I'm gonna do to access the secret key, I don't want to use configuration every time when I want to access this key. Instead of that, what I will do, I will create a class which I will map with this section, this configuration section, and inject object of that class in any class that I want to use the secret key with. Okay, to do that, first thing that I'm gonna do is to create the class. So I'm gonna copy this and create a class. Next, and I'm gonna create the same field which is already there. So let's go ahead and create that same field in our class here. Okay, so to map this class with our ASP app settings configuration section, what you do, you go to your startup class. You go to your startup class, and in the configuration section, you say that we would like to get the JWT section from app settings, get the section, and then we are telling our services to map that section with JWT class that we just created. So next time, if you want to access this this section in any of the class, the only thing that you need to do is to inject this JWT settings. So I want to use the key. I want to use this key in my user's control so that I can sign the token, right? So let's go ahead and inject a JWT settings in our user's control. To do that, I am going to copy this local variable. I'm going to create a local variable. And then I'm going to inject the I options. I'm going to copy it from here. Inject I options, and then assign these JWT settings that we configured at the startup, and assign it to our local variable here. To do that, I'm going to copy this code and paste it here. So basically, we're trying to get these I options and get the value of these I options and assigning it to JWT settings. Nice. Now let's go ahead and sign our token. To do that, the first thing that you need to do, you will need JwtBearer in your dependencies. So let's go ahead and add that. You go to your browse section and say JWT, and you can see this Microsoft ASP.NET Core Authentication JwtBearer. I'm going to go and install that. Nice. Now we already have this function which is authenticating the user, and you sign the token after user has been authenticated. So for signing the token, I'm going to copy paste this code. This is pretty simple code. there are two main things that you can see here. One is you have to create a token handler, and then you have to create a security descriptor. Token handler is something which creates the token, and security descriptor tells you that what kind of claims this user has and what kind of key you're using, what kind of algorithm you're using. We'll go through this code line by line. So I'm creating this token handler. I create a token handler, then I'm using the secret key that I created in my JWT settings, in my app settings, and I'm getting bytes of that string and putting in my varchar here, var key here. Okay, and then I am creating a instance of security token descriptor. For that, we'll have to bring in Microsoft Identity Model Tokens. And then this security token descriptor is adding some subject, which is like claims identity, where I'm passing the user email address. So basically in this case, it's johnsmith@gmail.com, and passing that as subject, which means that it's the name identifier. That's where you add the claims of the token. Okay, so the second thing is expire. So we can define when to expire this token. So for me, I've added 6 months. So after authenticating, the token that I'm creating will last for 6 months. And then I'm mentioning the signing credentials, which is taking the key from the secret key from our app settings. And then I'm telling that it needs to use this HMAC SHA signature to sign the token. And then the token handler is creating the token using the token descriptor that we just created, and then token handler uses the same token which you created and writes a token, and that's what gets assigned to the user that I'm trying to return back to the client. All right, let's run this and see if it's creating the token or not. Okay, that's running. So if I go to my Postman here, and here, like I said, I'm passing username and password in the body, and I'm going to click on send. So when I click on send, you can see that now token has this value where it's divided into three parts. Where the first is header, payload, and the signature. Let's copy this and try to validate this in JWT website. So if I go to JWT.io, you can try to validate your request to your tokens here. So I'm gonna copy the token here. You can see that it's using the algorithm HS256, type is JWT. You can see John Smith's name here, and now we have some issue at, which is January 17th 2020, which is the current date, and expiry is July 17, 2020, which is 6 months after the token is created, and not before is basically something which is like this token should not be used before this time. Okay, and you can see the token is the same. You can see that it's showing invalid signature here. That's because the key that they're using is this. So let's copy paste the key that we have here in our app settings. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of this key, I'm going to paste my key. So you can now see that the signature is verified, and the signature part of our request is still the same. So you can see that me5yza. You can see that me5yza in our system. Okay, so this is how you generate the token. How do you validate the request? So what I want to do, I have this API publishers publisher request, and it returns all the publishers for me. What I want to do, I want to authorize this request. I want user to send me a valid token before getting any data from my publisher web request. So how do you do that? So the first thing that you need to do, you need to go to your startup class, and here you mention say that my app is going to use authentication now. And then we will have to add what kind of authentication your services are going to use. For that, I'm going to copy this code. Copy this code and paste it here. So you can see here that I'm adding authentication of type JwtBearer default authentication scheme. So there are two things that you need to do here. You have to create default authentication scheme and default challenge scheme and assign it to JWT authentication scheme here. And that's how you add authentication. And then you add a JWTBearer, which for which you tell like if the request is coming from an HTTPS or not, are you saving the token or not, and the validation parameters. In validation parameters, you can see that I am using validate issuer signing key to true, and issuer signing key, the key that it's been used, and I'm pulling that key from my app settings again. Validate issuer is basically trying to read the value of the issuer. We're going to learn more about this as we go into the video series, but currently I just want to enable JWT in for my project. Okay, so now that we have added this, let's rerun this again and see if we are still getting our publishers or not. Okay, so I'm still getting my publishers. What I would like to do, I would not, I don't want to get this publishers for any request. To do that, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to my publishers controller, and the only thing that I need to do is just say that please authorize this controller before receiving any object or before receiving any request. Okay, now let's run this and see if we are getting any request, if we can get response from our publishers. Okay, so if I go and say send, now we are getting unauthorized. You can see that now we are not sending any token in the headers, and that's why we're getting this unauthorized request. But if I copy this token that we just created and go to my authorization header and say it's a better token, and I'm gonna paste it here. And now if I go and send the request, boom, there you go. Now we are getting the request. And that's how you can add authorization support for your ASP.NET Web API. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter or Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.